Something a bit more weird than what I just said. So I went to see a medium. Oh, well, she did it over the telephone last week because my cat died, as you know, and my dad came through and my friend came through, and they both said to me, "You need to have." You need to go and get tested for an assessment for autism. And that really shocked me a little bit. But then I was thinking, actually, that would make a lot of sense, because things like I've only just realized about, have you heard of stimming?
Yeah.
So autistic people, they do this a lot. And I knew about stimming, but not in a million years did I ever think I stimmed. But I do stim. So when I was, the more I'm becoming aware of it, when I was a child, I used to pull my eyelashes out constantly. I was always, and apparently that's stimming, and it's also a sign of OCD. So stimming doesn't have to be just, visual hands movements. It can be twirling the hair rigorously. It can be anything at all. Like my mum, she's got autism, and she said she always used to put a jaw to the side when she was young, always like that. And so what happens is apparently you can either learn to control the stims or you just move one stim to another stim. So for me, I stopped pulling my eyelashes out, I think, when I became quite aware of it, when people was telling me off for pulling my eyelashes out. I had no eyelashes as a child. But then at some point I stopped, and now I don't do it here, but when I'm walking, I'm always rubbing these two fingers together. Always. Not in front of me, just, when I'm thinking about something, when I'm concentrating. And what I've realized just from, my dead dad saying, go and get an assessment for autism, I've realized, because I've become really aware of it, thinking, surely I don't have autism. Like, what are the signs? And writing them down. And I've become really aware that I have OCD in my stims. So I don't just do it, I do it subconsciously, but I don't just do it so many times and then forget. I'll subconsciously do it maybe 4 times or 8 times, and it's usually an even number. And I do it with my big toe and the toe next to it as well. So obviously I know I've gone off topic a little bit, but I just, I find it.
But it's not really off topic though, is it? Because there's lots of links between things like eating disorders and body dysmorphia and other neurodivergent diagnoses. I mean, I don't know whether I'm saying it in the correct way, but that's what I understand. Is that right, Jennie?
Absolutely. Well, we all did the wonderful Mind Blossom course on eating disorders, which brought in body dysmorphia to some extent, and Olivia featured on that, which was wonderful. But that was very much the case, wasn't it? That they were looking at the full array of disorders that kind of fit together. And I think it's really common that where there's body image issues, that we'll find other elements. So a really interesting step for you, Olivia.
Yes, to be continued.
How do you feel about it though?
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Well, it's funny because since my dad in heaven and my friend in heaven, both of them they came through and they both said you need to get an assessment for OCD or ADHD for autism, because they think I have all three. I already knew I had ADHD and OCD, but not only around a phobia that I have spiders. Like I didn't realize I had OCD around stimming, which is, it scares me a bit. Not the diagnosis, but what scares me is that I didn't realize, like, just from hearing someone say I have that assessment, it's made me really aware of myself, and I'm now very conscious of whenever I stim, and I do it a lot, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. I'm constantly either twitching my toes or twitching my fingers or moving my, itching, or I do it terribly when I just before I go to sleep. So when I'm in bed, I do it the most, where I'll move, and I feel like everything has to be in the right place, like the exact within a millimeter. My body has to be, my head has to be in the right position within a millimeter. You know, it's very precise. And I just thought that's just me being a bit weird. And I embrace my weirdness, but I think now I'm realizing, even though I knew a lot about OCD, I think that is a form of OCD. So I'm learning about myself, even when I just thought I got to know myself at 51. You know, I've become quite obsessed with it. And that's another trait of autism. Yeah, and I am quite an obsessed, you know, I pick things up, become obsessed with them, and then drop them like a hot potato. Same with people. I can become quite obsessed with people as well, which, you know, it's not something I'm proud of, but it is something that it can happen. So yeah.
Well, you've stuck with us and you've stuck with this process. You and I have known one another, I don't know how many years.
Well, yeah, 2009.
Is it really that long ago?
Yeah.
Can you see any links, Olivia, to your body dysmorphia then? And can you, now that you're starting to understand all of this,
absolutely,
can you see how it influences it?
Yeah, I mean, I've done nothing but think about, do I have autism and how is it linked to my previous body dysmorphic disorder? And it all boils down to the preoccupation. Like I'm very hypersensitive to and hyper focused to specific things, not just hobbies, but to myself. So for example, if I have a spot that, let's say I have a spot on the back of my neck and I can't see it, I'll know it's there. It's a weird thing, like my hand will automatically go, it's almost like my hand is showing me that there's a spot, and then my brain says, oh yeah, I knew that was there. I know that, again, that's going off piste a little bit, but I'm working it out, and the more I try and work it out, the more I realize, yes, I do mask a lot of my behaviors, and I have had to learn a lot about body dysmorphic disorder. I can understand why I was very preoccupied with my body. It was just my way of coping with myself. And I think, yeah, I'm still learning. I'll get back to you on that. So yeah.
Were you going to ask something, Jennie, or are we?
It's wafted out of my consciousness. Oh, I did want to reflect that you were talking about having to be in exactly the right position in bed. And that really made me think about the need for, or the perfectionism that is a thread that runs through this.
Yeah.
So what is perfectionism then? Does anybody, because it's not about doing something perfectly, is it?
Well, it could be, but so yes, it could be about this real desire to be the best, be the most. So I work with a client at the moment who her great desire throughout her life has been to be the most beautiful.
Right. Wow.
So these unattainable heights, and sort of you can also have to be the best at school. The best report, the best grade. It's like an exaggeration of any facet.
Underlying that presumably is the idea that they're not good enough, or
Absolutely.
they're not the best, or
yes.
But who gets to determine what is good enough in the first place? This is the thing. Like so just relating to my own experiences, I used to say I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. But who planted that in my head? I planted it in my head, but where did it come from? Or
in comparison to what? That's the thing, isn't it? In comparison to what?
And also, where didn't it? So I didn't have a great amount of love, in the physical love, in my childhood, partly because my mum is quite on the spectrum, and she just, she didn't show physical love. Didn't mean she didn't love me, but it wasn't shown to me. So I think I formed a belief that I wasn't good enough because there was a lack, and I'm not blaming anybody, but I feel like I've formed a belief in my mind that because there's a lack of love and attention, I'm not good enough. But it can be formed from anything. So it's not necessarily something that you've picked up from someone. It can be through a lack of something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I wasn't expecting that kind of conversation this morning.
Oh, we could talk about this until I've thought of nothing but since since my dad saying get an assessment, and obviously it can be hereditary, and because my mum has it, I'm now at a place where I'm thinking, if you do have it, why don't you just accept it? Why is there such a big resistance within your chest? I've started to get more anxiety around it, and it's like I'm a dog with a bone. My brain has become obsessed with it, wanting to know more about autism and how it fits me, and it's a new obsession that I don't want this new obsession, but it's become, and this is another sign of autism, and it becomes unhealthy to the point where that's all you think about. And again, that really closely links with body dysmorphic disorder and eating disorders, and I can see how an obsession with my body. My first obsession was because I had such big boobs overnight. They just came from nowhere. And then I was so obsessed with like pushing them in, flattening them down, wearing the tightest bras to try and make them look smaller. I was constantly thinking about my boobs, how they looked when I laid down, how they looked when I sat up. Did my boobs touch my belly when I scrunched over? All of these questions, and it's just like a cycle, and it goes on, and that's why it can become out of control. And I think that's why the preoccupation becomes a lot bigger than, I guess, someone that doesn't have autism or ADHD, just because they're able to regulate their emotions a lot better and stop their mind from working overtime. It's like we get like a snippet of something and it runs away with us. And I'll give you an example of this. So I have a phobia of spiders, and I know some other people that have a phobia of spiders. And whenever I see a spider, for about 2 weeks, my OCD is really bad. Like I'm constantly checking, reassure myself that I'm safe, there's nothing there. But then I've spoken to other people that tell me they have the same intense phobia, and then they say, oh, I saw a spider the other night, and like, how long did it take you to get over that? Like, to stop looking? And like, I don't check afterwards. It's just really awful, but I don't do any of those repetitive behaviors afterwards. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's not a phobia then. In my mind, I'm thinking, that sounds a lot easier than my phobia. And I think that is maybe a good example of someone that is neurodiverse versus someone that's not neurodiverse, because you see something, you become scared of it, the threat is moved away, you forget about it. We see something, we become scared of it, the threat is moved away, but in our eyes, the threat is still living deeply within us for like so long that we can't think of anything else, and it becomes all consuming. But yeah, I don't know what you think about that.
I think it gives a really good insight into how deep this goes. I mean, blimey, and how exhausting it must be for people who have these kind of neurodivergence, and how all-consuming it must be. And for people who don't, how probably difficult it is to understand